Gen X and our first jobs, and how hard it was to get them or not. Hi, my name is Jeffrey Luscombe. I am author of two novels, Shirts and Skins, and To Refrain from Embracing, about growing up Generation X and what it was like to grow up kind of feral, without a lot of rules, without a lot of supervision, and both the good and bad that came of that. So today I thought I'd talk about our first jobs. Tell you about my first jobs. But the thing about Generation X is that our first jobs aren't necessarily the first time we worked. The first time I worked, I was 10. I told them I was 12. I guess that made it okay. Looking back on it, seems kind of nuts. But I was 10 years old and I picked fruit. I grew up in East Hamilton, which is not far from Niagara, where they grow a lot of these cherries and strawberries and peaches and such. And so I picked fruit at 10 years old. And so in the morning, if you're not going to believe this one, but I would stand at the top of our street, like 6:30 in the morning, 7, whatever it was, and a van would pull up to me, a van, and me, a 10-year-old kid, would get into the back of this van. And in the back would be other, some kids and mostly adults. And we would be driven, I was the youngest, would be driven down to Niagara to some farm where I would pick fruit. And when I was picking cherries, they would give me a small tree to myself. And I had this sort of bucket that would hook onto a leather harness, and they had a ladder, and I would climb the ladder and start at the top like they told me, and I would work my way down picking these cherries. And I would have a little card, and they would with a little punch and number off how many baskets I picked that day. And yeah, and I did this through the summer. Yep, standing on the street corner waiting for a van to pick me up in the early morning to do this, and it would drop me off at like 4 in the afternoon, and I would get like this little packet of money at the end of the week, and it was enough, for whatever I was buying at 10. Smokes, yeah, I was smoking at 10, 11. A lot of us did, we did. Gen X quit 22 years ago, but I was smoking back then. A lot of us did, like I said. But that was the first time I worked, and many Gen X, for whatever jobs they were doing or whatever they worked, their first job wasn't necessarily the first time that they worked, like me. But let me tell you about my first job. I was 16, just got my license, I think, and I thought, hey, why don't I get a job? I'm going to tell you how easy it was for me, and I think Gen X in general, to get jobs then. But I said, hey, I think I'll get a job today. So I drove down to a student employment center, which was like exactly like the adult one, but it was for students. And I walked in, and someone said, hey, you're looking for a job? And I said, I am. They said, okay, come on over. And I sat down, and they go, here's a few jobs. And I went, I really didn't want to work with food. They said, oh, here's one. It's pretty good. It was more than minimum wage. And I don't mean minimum wage for students at the time. It was more than minimum wage for adults. And they said it's a gas station car wash, and it's just down the street if you're on Highway 20. And I said, okay, sounds good. So they called up the manager. The manager said, come on down. Drove over, had a quick interview, and 20 minutes later, I had my first job at 16 that I had for a couple of years, and really liked. But yeah, that's how easy it was for me. And I don't think there was anything special about me. But the thing was, Gen X, between the boomers and the millennials, we were a very small generation, and there was a lot of jobs, and there wasn't many of us. And that's just the way it was. So we really didn't have a difficult time getting our first job, or, any job. For, like I watch kids today. I saw on the news where there was like this huge lineup, like 1,000 kids like lined up trying to get like a job at like some crappy carnival type of deal for just a few weeks during the summer, like 1,000 kids trying to get a few jobs. And I thought, whoa, that it wasn't that difficult for us. Like I feel bad for these kids. Like it just wasn't that difficult for us to get a job. And it's funny because like I still remember all my friends, still friends with them, all my Gen X bunch from high school, is I still remember exactly where all of them worked. Like I know who worked at Wendy's, and I know who worked at Tim Hortons, and I know who worked at McDonald's, and I know who worked at like the Odeon theaters, and I know who worked at the video store. And the funny thing is, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you experienced this to Gen X where you were working, but is that we sort of had our own underground secret economy. So, if a friend came through, someone I knew, and I would just give them a free car wash. Like, yeah, they were numbered, and yeah, I sort of figured out how to write these things off. But yeah, someone would come through, and I just go through, and forget about the money, right? Free car wash, and then I would go to Tim Hortons, I get a free coffee. You know, uh, then they might go to the Odeon Theater and see a free movie. So we were all like giving each other this this free stuff at McDonald's, and uh, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Pal worked in Kentucky Fried Chicken, or the video store. We never paid for videos, you know, uh, because I know the guy behind the counter, and it wasn't too far from my car wash, and they might come through the next day. Uh, and I give them a free car wash. And there was like this whole economy that we had, like just between us, where, we just gave each other stuff, which was cool. Like, I don't know if kids do this anymore. Probably, I don't know, cameras everywhere and everyone knows what they're doing every second of the day. But back then we could do that, and we did do it. It was just like something we did. Was it wrong? I don't know. No. don't, I don't think it was wrong. It was just what we did. And it was just one of the ways we lived and survived and did stuff. And and from the time I got that job, is my parents never bought another article of clothing for me unless it was Christmas or something. Like I bought everything for myself after that at 16, because I was making good money. I was working 18 hours a week, 24 hours a week, or more, and so were my friends. And still going to school, still getting good grades and doing our thing. But yeah, we all worked, and like all of us, I don't know anybody who didn't work. And like I said, from a young age, not everyone started at 10 being picked up in a van, but some of us did. And I'll tell you, some people listening to this podcast right now are going, "Oh yeah, I worked at my uncle's farm, and I was like 8 or something." Like I'm telling you, like this was a Gen X thing. But yeah, I feel sorry for these kids these days who are having such a hard time getting even like the crappiest job. It's too bad. But we didn't. We just from the time that we came up, and the jobs that were available and the number of people that were around, that it was very easy. So that was my first job. I actually loved it right up to the time that I finished school, and then I worked for 2 years in a factory. I'll talk about that some other time. So I left the car wash gas station and went right into a factory. Yeah, worked there for 2 years before I went back to college. But yeah, I made all my money for college. See, we never had to worry about like debt with university or that sort of thing. So you, you know, it's just the way it was with Gen X. And every generation is going to have the pros and cons about it, and what life was like when they were growing up. But this was how it was for Gen X. I'm sure the Gen X folks out there know that. So, Gen X, like, what was your first job? And were you a part of this sort of underground economy that I'm talking about, where you just sort of like gave each other, free video rentals, free snack bags from Kentucky Fried Chicken, and free coffee, and free movies, and free car washes, and it's like we're not talking about billions of dollars, but it was just what we did, at least where I came from. Like, pals coming through. I'm not gonna take your money for a car wash. You really want my 55 cents for Tim Hortons coffee? And so yeah, it was fun. It taught us a lot, I think. But it's a shame that kids can't find jobs as easily as we did. Like I'm sure my 20-minute story. Hey, I think I'll get a job. Then I had one. Probably doesn't exist anymore. But that's the way it was. So tell me your Gen X story. What was your first job? And what was the first time you worked? I'm curious. If anyone can beat 10 years old. and with my little basket picking cherries for cigarette money at 10. Oh, that's so Gen X, isn't it? That is so bloody Gen X. So I think that's it for me. Like I said, I'm Jeffrey Luscombe, author of Shirts and Skins and To Refrain from Embracing. I write about being Gen X in a very realistic, naturalistic way. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't romanticize it. Yes, we drank from the hose, and yes, we didn't come home until the streetlights came on, and yes, we uh, we were all cooking our own lunch at 6 and 7. But there's a darker side to that too, of growing up feral and the dangers and hardships and that were involved with that. And I try to write about that in my novels, Shirts and Skins and To Refrain from Embracing. If you're looking for some Gen X literature, and the new one, To Refrain from Embracing, is all set in the summer of 1977. And if you remember the summer of 1977, best year ever. That one in 1984, best years ever. Um, then you might enjoy it. So I think that's it for me uh, for today. And I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I'm kind of enjoying doing them. They're kind of easy breezy, um, one shot. I don't edit. I just kind of start recording. So they're kind of fun. A few people have found them. Some of my readers and are kind of getting a kick out of it, telling me to keep doing them. So I'll do them for uh, for as long as I do them. How's that? And special shout out to Gen X. And yeah, let me know about your first job, what it was like, uh, how easy it was for you to get, and if you still remember that Gen X economy, let me know. Thanks a lot, and have a good day.